open up tonight for any questions or concerns that you might have. As I said, it was a continuation from the last time, and I'd just like to hear more about what you had to say, and if you have any questions, thoughts, or concerns.
I guess I'll open it up. Tony, thank you again for coming out to meet with the
Excuse me, if I'm not loud enough, I'll use this, but I'll try to talk a little louder tonight. If you ask me to use the microphone, we will. Sorry.
So thanks again for coming out to meet us all. I'm going to jump right into Maryland 75, as you know. As a member of Rail, it's my number one issue. So I spoke to it last time, and I just want to go through some more detailed information that I have. I handed out this information sheet to you, as well as to the people that are here. So starting off, Maryland, the state has identified Route 75 as what they call a P3 project, which stands for Public-Private Partnership. And they're talking about private source contributions from Maryland 75 corridor improvements. So Lansdale is contributing $3,005,000. Monrovia Town Center is contributing $3,675,000. And KC $1,669,000. And that's from the county annual transportation priorities review from 2015. So that's a total of $8.349 million. Right? So then, also in the annual transportation priorities review, again, that's a county document.
Just so folks can understand, would you like to explain because obviously some of these numbers may or don't appear to agree with what agreements exist for what people are supposed to be putting into. So I'm just curious if you could explain the numbers as you pulled them off of the website, because I won't even pretend to understand what you have here. And just give it a little bit more detail so folks can understand.
Sure. As a matter of fact, I copied this verbatim from, and again, it's the County Annual Transportation Priorities Review for 2015. So these numbers are coming straight off of that. And so these are the numbers that have been specifically identified through the LOUs of these three specific developments.
Okay.
Were simply related to the Maryland 75 Corridor Improvement Program, not including any of the infrastructure within the developments, the streets that you would live on, etc. So I'm just talking about the broader Maryland 75 Corridor Improvement. Okay? It went on to say in that report that the county is contributing $500,000 for 2 years, 2019 and 2020, for partial funding of right-of-way, and that they may fund an approximately $1.5 million in the future after that. So, and then it says that developers are then responsible for the roadway design and construction within that obtained right-of-way. So they go on to list the how it's planned out. It's a secondary highway project, and it lists the phases that it's going to be planned out. So it has the total project from I-70 down to Lewisdale Road. That's not the total project, but most of it. And then it has a north segment, Maryland 80 intersection, a middle segment, and the south segment. Okay? So these are the different phases that they've identified that to plan out the improvement. So some additional information, you go to the backside on page 2, there's a consolidated transportation program that MDOT puts out. Okay, and they take this information from the counties, including this 2015 Transportation Priorities Review, and they have not included anything for 75 in this document, Consolidated Transportation Program for fiscal year 2015 to 2020. There's no funding for the 75 Corridor Improvement Program. They have included $2.3 million to replace the bridge over Haynes Branch, but that's an expenditure that's unrelated to the development projects.
Say that part about the bridge again.
The state has basically funded agreed to fund $2.3 million to replace the bridge on Green Valley Road over Haynes Branch.
But that Haynes Branch is well north of Newmarket.
Sure.
It's up close to Liberty, I believe.
So that's the only thing that the state and any of their documents has identified funding for Maryland 75. Okay. Then, as part of the Annual Transportation Priorities Review for 2014, there was a questionnaire, and that came from the Blaine Young Board, that they had to respond to from MDOT. MDOT puts out a questionnaire, and the county has to respond. And in that, the county is only committing $2 million to the project for right-of-way acquisition for eminent domain. It indicates the project is consistent with the 2010 comprehensive plan goals. Now, that's not true because we know that the comprehensive plan essentially looked at Monrovia Town Center in particular and noticed that there wasn't the infrastructure necessary, or there couldn't be adequate infrastructure to support the development. So that statement really conflicts with what they did in 2012 with the zoning review. It also states the project would eliminate truck clearance problems at CSX Bridge. Well, of course, this is going to allow more truck traffic to Costco. And then it says that it states that the project facilitates infill growth in priority funding areas and reduces auto emissions. Well, that's not true. Maryland 75 is outside of the priority funding area, and it's ineligible for state funding. And there's two sources for that. I only listed one on here. And that was a May 12, 2014 fact meeting in which representatives from MDOT and SHA said, point blank, it's not in a priority funding area. Now, the other piece of information that I wish I put on there, but I couldn't find it home, is this letter from September of 2014, and it is from the Secretary of MDOT, James Smith, and it's to Blaine Young. And it addresses some of the county's highway priorities. And it says here, specifically related to Maryland 75, it says Maryland 75 improvements at Maryland 8. And it lists Lansdale at 1,100 units, Monrovia at 1,500 units, and says developments are not inside a priority funding area. Construction of these improvements is the county's #1 overall priority. The county should look to developers to fund improvements which the county has not done thus far. They're indicating that the county has not gotten enough money from developers. And they go on to say that we encourage you to begin conversations with the Maryland Department of Planning on smart growth issues in this corridor. So MDOT is acknowledging their issues. So how does this all break down? I put some cost estimates here. On the 2014 highway needs inventory, there's two major contributions to 75 that are identified. The Maryland 75 from I-70 to 355 of $152 million, and then to improve and create an interchange at 270 at Maryland 75. They're going to keep the existing interchange at 109 for the state, but they want to create a new interchange at 270, and that's $119 million. So that's $270 million. That's a conservative estimate, because Ron Burns stated at a fact meeting that it could cost up to $500 million. So from that, you can deduct the total cost that I previously identified, the developer contributions of roughly $8.4 million, and then the county contributions of $2 million. So those amounts to $10,350,000. So either way, under either scenario, under the highway needs inventory or under Ron Burns scenario, you're looking at a minimum of $260,000 of unfunded contributions or $490,000 of unfunded contributions.
That's million.
I'm sorry, million. What did I say? No, million.
400, correct you.
490 million and 260 million. So I just, again, I posed this question to you before. How do you propose to pay for Route 75 when the state has made it abundantly clear that there's no money and the developers are not?
I think we can all agree that 75 has been kicked around, and that we haven't had a consistent effort from our government in Frederick County for years. We have not had a consistent effort pushed from our local government for years to improve Route 75, and it is sorely needed. If no development happened in Monrovia or Lansdale, given what is approved above us, 75 absolutely needs to be improved, one way or the other. And I think we can all agree to that. The question is, how do we convince the county, i.e. the executive, to say that we want 75 to be a priority in the county? Barring any development, it's absolutely a necessity. And we can look at every priority that's out there, and I disagree strongly with putting 194 at the top of the priority list. When you look at the amount of, they're not doing nearly the amount of construction out there that is now slated for Lake Lanier or anything like that. There's no doubt about that. So I think we need to have a consistent effort to push the state, which I plan on start doing. I'm going to start making phone calls, and I will push the legislators to understand the importance of 75 to all the residents that are there now and all those that will come over the next 15 or 20 years. Because I don't pretend to say, hey, look, this development's going to take 30 years, 40 years. Some will. We never know what the economy is going to do. Will it ever boom like it did back in 05, 04, and 03?
We're still having problems hearing a little bit. If you could
Is that better?
Yeah.
I'll have to get real close to this one. Okay, so at any rate, I would like to try my best as your representative to keep pounding that issue over and over. As far as, I think some of the only ways that we're going to get money is like the state has said, through public-private partnership. You know, currently, these numbers here, though, I don't think reflect some of what, if Monrovia Town Center were to be developed and the DRRAs continue to go through, certainly that would not pay for what is supposed, what the developer is supposed to be building, which is from the top of the hill above what was Lawson Store, or as Lawson Store as I knew it, I don't know what y'all knew it as for years, all the way back past the post office. And that's a significant amount of road improvement. Steve, you're shaking your head.
It doesn't go past the post office.
Does it just go right to the post office then?
No, it goes more towards the, that court, Nevis Place.
Where is the connection, you know what, for clarification, the connection coming from Ed McLean? Where does the connection come from Ed McLean across 275?
Right now, it actually projects rather low, rather south, you know, as we look at the development. It kind of comes in from Ed McLean and hits a circle and dips well down into MTC. So it's probably at most, I'd say it's less than a quarter mile, maybe an eighth of a mile north of 80. It's very low. It's south of Nevis. So
He's
yeah,
correct. That is correct.
When you look at the 4-lane improvement they'll make,
They did that back then, right?
it only will go up to the limits of the developed area on either side of 75. So you can look at where the homes are now and know that 4 lanes is going to be south of those homes.
At any rate, I have to ask the question though, if you're gonna improve any of the road, if it's not, if we did nothing, let's say it just doesn't happen, we still have a horrible mess on 75, would you agree?
Yeah, but I don't see why we need to make it, we don't need to make
And
it
as far as,
worse.
you know, there's, I wanna make it really clear, as like far as fixing the bridge on CXX, so for CSX underneath there, you know, I've recently received some emails concerning, you know, there is some examples up in Pennsylvania where they've lowered a bridge to allow tractor trailers to go under. With all due respect to them, I don't wanna see any tractor trailers going through there. And there's no reason why we hopefully can't convince the state to say no through trucks. And that would answer the question for those local grain haulers that do farm around that area, that have to go north to take their products to the grain silos.
That is an issue, and I'd like it if you could go to Costco and get some money from them for turnarounds. I mean, they're part of this deal. We should be looking to them also to make sure that there is no truck traffic going on that road to their distribution center.
And I
So
know
that's a
people
separate
have been over
conversation.
there, and it is, but it wraps into 75. It's all very important. And, you know, to sit up here and say, do I have an answer for the things that you're saying? No, I don't. The only thing we can do is continue to pound the state and say this is important. You mentioned the interstate on I-270. Without a doubt, that's going to be federal money. You don't think the state's going to pick up that entire
There
$9
is no
million?
federal money. They want to read the post office pension fund, to fund the transportation.
But the fact is, that's a federal project. It's not going to be, 270 is not going to be done with state money.
Right.
Well, maybe some state money. I
And
mean, I can't
there's
speak
not gonna
for
be
sure
a
about that.
fallout to the state either. There's no money. They've mined everything.
Well, I think you're starting to see some improvement in what the state's going to be doing in throwing more money to roads. I mean, that's already evident from what's occurred recently.
I'll just wrap up and respond to your counter to me. I mean, we can pound SHA up all we want, but we're pounding sand in that regard. They have, again, they've made it abundantly clear through numerous channels that they're not interested and they don't have the money to fund improvements to Route 75. Okay? And as far as, you know, Costco, we need to get money from them, and these projects are outlined, the phases here. They want to put a extension over CSX. I mean, these are how the project is planned, and there's no money. And as far as the fact that, do we need improvements to the road as it exists? Yes, we've needed them for years, but these developments are compounding the problem. We need to fix it first before we build these developments. And also, 40 years ago, I know this was in the planned growth area, but it was never planned as R3. It was never planned to this level of density. So I would like, if you said we're missing numbers from these, you don't think that these are the correct numbers, I'd like, what numbers are they? Tell us what you think.
I'd like to review, and that's all.
Yeah.
I just have to review.
I mean, no disrespect, to be perfectly honest with you, as our council member, you should know these numbers and you should have them. You should be telling us what the numbers are and how it's gonna be paid for, because you know that's our question. So tell us, how are you gonna get money from SHA? Please tell us. How do
I
you?
just said it, the only way you're gonna do it is continually to lobby it. I mean, how else are you gonna do that?
How many,
Is Councilman Shaw gonna be able to go down there and say, hey, 75s need this? You know, let's be realistic, you know that's not gonna happen.
okay,
I mean, I'm under no illusions that, you know, this is gonna happen overnight.
right.
It hasn't happened in 40 years.
So what we're asking is for you to be realistic and realize that maybe this project isn't a good idea because there's not gonna be any money there.
Well, I want
As a conservative,
I want to speak specifically that,
That's
I would
the
speak
approach
to the fact that even the state recognizes that in order to get road improvements, they are recognizing that you have to have more public-private partnership. I don't think that 75 should be the burden of every taxpayer in Frederick County.
it will be though.
Pardon?
It will be though, on these
I
numbers.
don't think the entire thing, I mean, if we get the right public-private partnership.
You get that? This is net. These numbers I showed you unfunded are net of the public-private partnership. And the state is doing public-private partnerships because that's an admission to them to say, you know, we don't have the money. So if you guys want to develop, you guys have to get the money from private sources. And the private sources here aren't kicking in nearly enough. 10 million on 270 or 500 million. You pick your poison. It's not. That's all I'm saying.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I just want to add to that point. So it seems to me what the BOCC did and what you're now in a position to either stop or to continue is to play this big game of chicken with the state. You know, you talk about the development that's been approved, is going to happen. We talk about Casey, Glenton here. Those things are so premature at this point. You know, there's all sorts of possibilities in terms of, you know, taking a second look at that. You now have a specific opportunity to take a second look at MTC. If you advocate for proceeding with these developments, you're basically guaranteeing that 75 is going to get so much worse from a safety and congestion perspective. You're guaranteeing the problem, all on a hope that the state will fix it. You're playing a big game of chicken with the state, and the people who are at risk are all of us and our children. How can you conceivably play that game? You know, you can say how it's got to be, you know, we got to have public-private partnerships, you know, with the developers, but that means you're guaranteeing more homes, more cars. You're following the same broken approach to planning that I hear time and again. We have to make it so bad, make the problem so much worse that the state's got to come in and fix it. At the cost of how many accidents, how many injuries, how many deaths. That's what you need to decide for yourself. And I hope you're thinking real hard about it, because you're playing a game of chicken with the state with our futures.
All right, I'd like to add, I've kind of prepared some things, I'm not real good at the top of my head, but I also do want to add to that I spoke with Sandra Lawrence at Shaw, specifically about the bridge. You know, we all know the height problem with the bridge. I've been, you know, on record, I've been saying 2 dump trucks cannot fit underneath that bridge. Well, he said that it's been striped for two cars. That 2 cars can fit underneath there, 2 trucks can fit underneath there. I said, how many inches across, how many feet across is that bridge? And can you tell me that 2 dump trucks can go underneath there at the same time? Well, he said, well, we have, you know, signs in place that it's a narrow bridge and you're supposed to go 15 miles an hour. And, you know, but we all know that that's not realistic. And with all the development that's coming, you see the dump trucks on the roads, you see the dump trucks on the roads, passing each other, it's going to get worse. Now that's a side note to what I have prepared. And mostly these are rhetorical questions, and, you know, obviously I'm very impassioned about this. But I want to know what you're doing for District 2. I didn't see you at any of the previous development hearings, not Mansdale, not Monrovia Town Center. You know, I didn't go to all the Bluntlinger and everything, but all that too. 16,000 homes, or whatever it is a lot of homes to ignore. I mean, you know what the traffic problems will be on 75. They are bad now. You live on 75. I worry about the dump trucks and the construction vehicles barreling up and down the road. I've clocked them myself, doing 65 miles an hour going towards Urbana. The speed limit is 50. That is not safe. What will happen when the construction picks up from all of the developments that are being approved? So I talk about the two dump trucks underneath the railroad bridge or any large construction vehicles. I worry about these same trucks that will try to pass school buses and trash trucks and farm tractors and mailmen on 75 and 80 every time they stop to pick up trash or deliver a child. We want answers. Do you have them? These are rhetorical. And are you even asking these questions? Because the last VOCC and the Planning Commission and Ron Burns didn't have those answers. And as you pour through the MTC records, you will see that there are still no real answers. There's no real money. And the patchwork of Band-Aids by the developers is not going to fix the problem on 75. So the little stretch that Roy Stanley's going to fix is not going to take care of all the developments. Hogan was elected. And guess what? Maryland 75 still doesn't have the money. We knew that that was concocted by somebody. So, do you still not care about Maryland 75? Are we going to just continue to play chicken? Okay, that's enough about roads. Schools. Do your children go to public schools? Well, I'm concerned about kids being cramped into classrooms or portables, being redistricted just to fix the numbers. That's Shreve's suggestion. You know what? That's not good for childhood social structure. And I think you probably should know that because you have a lot of kids and how important that is. You can't just move them around because, oh, there's too many kids here. There's too many kids here. Let's just move them over here, move them over there, yank them here and there. That's bad for children. I care about my children. You know, I seem angry because I don't like liars and I don't like people who back liars. I'm not calling you a liar, but I feel that you back some of those people. Do the right thing for once and put the people of District 2, those that you represent, first. Your decisions will not only affect the citizens here and our lives, but it will also affect your political future. And for the record, I do not accept an age-restricted community as a compromise. Most 55-year-olds continue to work and drive on a daily basis and will do nothing to resolve the problems on the roads. And there's nothing to stop Roy Stanley and the developers from using tricks in the future to change it back to all age. He has proved himself to be very untrustworthy. I want to know what you're going to do for District 2.
Let me address, I'd like to address one area that you mentioned, and that is the school system and the hard place that we've been put in due to what the state enacted in terms of the prevailing wage, which is costing us a lot of money. Right now, what we're doing is I have contacted, and I do have folks pulling the numbers for what the prevailing wage is costing us right now in Frederick County, with the hope of building a coalition. And I think I can say this, and hopefully she won't be have any issue with it, but I even think that Executive Gardner is also very concerned about the effects of the prevailing wage has had on public schools. Current dollar amount for Frederick High School, and we don't have the numbers back yet, we're waiting to get them back from the BOE, but they're suggesting that they need $25 million. Well, that prevailing wage is making it so that we can't build an elementary school right across the street here in 16 or 17. So it got pushed back another year because of that. To that regard, I have been talking to other legislators, trying to build a coalition to work forward to build some momentum to hopefully get enough facts around the entire state to go back hopefully to the legislators. But of course, you know, that comes from heavy-handed unions that came in and insisted on the prevailing wage. And the difference between a prevailing wage and a living wage, to give you an idea in Frederick County, and my numbers might be a little off, but and I can't remember exactly, to give you an idea, so for one particular trade group I remember looking at, it was like $24 an hour compared to $16 an hour. Those are huge numbers that we can't sustain that as an entire state, period. But it affects us here locally. So that is one of the things that I'm hoping that our local delegation is also going to look into to help you. Because you mentioned schools, and I'm going to get more of them. Well, if you're going to pay the prevailing wage, you're going to see schools built at a whole lot slower pace.
So,
I just have to object, having spent 35 years as a teacher, as spending that time, my own time, getting my degree, being a professional, getting a master's degree in education, and pursuing a doctorate degree in education. You tell me that I don't deserve a prevailing wage?
I'm not talking about your profession. I'm talking about the people who are going to be building these in the labor groups. the electric union, the carpenters union, the concrete folks. I'm talking about those folks there, these prevailing wages that we're having paid. This is not talking about teachers.
So,
And they don't deserve,
I'm not saying they don't deserve it, but anytime we continue to artificially raise the rates, and if you, do you want it both ways, or do you want one or the other? I'm not gonna sit here and I will have a discussion, I'm not gonna argue the facts. The fact is, prevailing wage is gonna cost us, pushing back one elementary in this school, and as right now, the numbers that we're hearing are $25 million on a building that should have cost $79 million.
so,
Add $25 million to it in order to meet prevailing wage. Where is it going? Because what we don't have, what we also don't have is, we're not hiring local companies. You know, it might be different if they said, hey, then you've got to hire a certain percentage of local companies. But we've got out-of-state people coming in here and working, and they're taking that wage and they're leaving the state. They're not even keeping it here.
So deal with that aspect of it.
Well, that's just one other aspect of it. I think the prevailing wage is wrong. I'm just not, I will not sit here and say that just, that the union's wrong on this one, and it's costing the taxpayers money. It's costing everyone in this room money.
Hey, Tony, so here's what you can do locally in response to that. Have you gone to Matan, have you gone to Natelli to try to put a cap, a lower cap on the build-out over at Urban Green, Urbana Northern MXV, and elsewhere in Urbana to relieve the pressure that's gonna come down the pipe for Sugarloaf Elementary?
Let me
That
ask you.
you can control. You can't control prevailing wage in Annapolis, but that you can.
Well, can we control it? I can certainly make a phone call.
I think we should look into that.
I have a question to what you said.
I can't control what they would like to do, but I can certainly answer the question.
And
Do that
County
as
have
ERA.
influence to see that labor is local.
So did I understand you that you're saying that we can't afford to pay the teachers?
No, that
Or
is
we
not.
can't afford to?
Prevailing
what they
wage
want?
in terms of the construction of any building, the way it was written, let me see if I can get the exact terminology was, that any program funded by the state up to 50%. If the state paid 50%, so when a school is built, typically the state puts in 50%. If they paid 50% or more, then we had to pay prevailing wages. So typically, you'd keep that under 50%, you didn't have to pay prevailing wages. In the last, before O'Malley left, one of the last things that they passed was they moved that percentage number down to 25%. We could avoid paying prevailing wage, if I'm not mistaken, and if I'm wrong on this, someone will correct me, I'm sure, if we picked up the full cost, or 75% of the cost of the school. So the state pushed the numbers up in order to force more of the prevailing wage, or force it down in this instance. So the cost of the school, the actual labor to build the school, this has nothing to do with the teachers and teachers' wages. It's a totally different subject. One for which I have publicly said, I'd like to see our teachers being paid more.
So you're not talking about teachers' wages, you're
I
talking
am
about.
not talking about teachers, I'm talking about the prevailing wage that garners all capital, that refers to all state projects, have to pay the prevailing wage, where the state now only has to put in 25%, then we're required to meet the prevailing wage rate.
on the
Previous, it was
construction of
50
the school.
on the construction of the schools. So Frederick High School went from an estimate of $79 or $80 million to 105, 110. The number's all over the place right now. And until they get their estimates back, I mean, they're not gonna really nail it down, but they know that it could be as much as 25% of the existing estimated cost of the high school. That number translates into almost an entire elementary school.
You're a home builder, right?
The economy hasn't been kind to me, I haven't built one in 4 years, but yes, I'm a home builder.
So if the home builder, or in this case, the commercial builder who puts up a school, saves X amount of dollars by not paying a prevailing wage, are you saying that the savings will be passed along to the taxpayers 100%? Or are these builders going to just skim that remainder for themselves?
I'm saying that it's a competitive bid process. And when the bids go out, and if they're able to bid, in other words, if you've ever done, and I'm sure many people here have done government work, when you did government work, if you have to meet the wage scale, if you're doing a government job, it's completely different from what I'm paying in the private sector. It's the same issue. They're gonna come out there, they're gonna bid the project, they know they have to bid at prevailing wages. And they know that their employee that they pay X dollars, $12 an hour, when they're in the private sector. As soon as they walk on that property to build that school, they're gonna be paying them 18 or 20. Because they're gonna pay them the prevailing wage. Not necessarily the living wage, because there's two different things there. The living wage and prevailing wage are different in every single county, municipality in the state.